The moment Jessica wheeled herself into the cozy downtown cafe, her heart fluttered with a mixture of excitement and nerves. It was her first date since the accident, her first attempt to let someone see beyond the wheelchair and the scars that had become part of her story. She had spent hours getting ready, choosing the soft blue dress that made her feel like herself again, brushing her hair until it reflected the last bits of sunlight through the cafe window. Yet as she waited, a sinking feeling settled in her chest. He was late. And then an hour passed. And another. Around her, laughter and chatter filled the air, couples sharing slices of cake, friends clinking coffee cups. But all Jessica could hear was the relentless tick of the wall clock and the echo of her own disappointment. She tried to shake it off, telling herself that maybe traffic, maybe something came up. But every excuse felt hollow, a fragile veil over the sting of rejection. She pushed her chair closer to the table, traced her fingers over the wood grain, and wondered if she would ever truly feel like she belonged in a world that moved so effortlessly around her. As she stared out the window, trying not to cry, the cafe door opened with a gentle chime. A man entered. Not the date she had been waiting for, but someone entirely different. He was tall, impeccably dressed in a tailored suit, and walking beside him was a little girl of about 6, clutching a stuffed bunny that looked as weary as she seemed. Their eyes met Jessica's, and for a brief, disarming moment it felt as if the world had paused. The man's gaze softened, not with pity, but with genuine curiosity, and the little girl waved shyly. Jessica's instinct was to retreat, to shrink into herself, to disappear into the background of the cafe. But something in the stranger's presence, warm, unassuming, unhurried, made her stay. The man approached her table with careful steps, as if sensing the delicate boundary between offering help and intruding, and spoke with a calm, reassuring voice. "Hi, I hope you don't mind me asking, but are you okay sitting here all alone?" Jessica hesitated, unsure how to respond. The words caught somewhere between pride and vulnerability. She nodded, a small, almost imperceptible gesture, and the man smiled gently, signaling no judgment, no expectation, just a shared human connection. "What's your name?" he asked, kneeling slightly so his face was closer to hers while the little girl peered around his legs, curious and alert. "Jessica," she whispered, her voice trembling as it always did when she felt exposed. "I'm Thomas," he said, extending a hand that was steady, warm, and somehow grounding, as if offering a lifeline without asking for anything in return. "This is Emily," he added, nodding toward the little girl. "We just came for a quick coffee, but it seems fate had other plans." The corners of Jessica's mouth twitched into a smile she didn't realize she had been holding back. The little girl's eyes were wide, filled with the kind of innocence that could see straight through pretense, and she offered Jessica the bunny, as if sensing that this gesture might bridge the distance between her solitude and the world outside. Jessica laughed softly, the sound hesitant but genuine, and for the first time that evening she felt a spark of something she hadn't felt in months. Hope. They talked, first in cautious, polite sentences, then gradually in stories that spilled from the heart. Thomas shared anecdotes about running a company that demanded everything from him, about the little victories and small failures that reminded him how fragile life could be. Emily giggled at the funny noises Jessica's wheelchair made on the cafe tiles, and Jessica found herself relaxing, letting her guard down in a way that felt terrifyingly good. She told them about her own life before the accident, the dreams she had nurtured, the moments she had loved, and the tragedy that had redefined everything. Each word was a tiny act of courage, each pause a testament to the vulnerability she was willing to embrace. Thomas listened without interruption, without pity, and when she mentioned her fears of being abandoned, of being invisible to the world, his gaze held a silent promise that sometimes connection doesn't come from obligation, but from choice, and the heart knows when it wants to meet another in honesty. The cafe staff started closing tables, dimming lights, but none of them seemed to notice as the trio remained in their small bubble of conversation. At one point, Emily tugged on Thomas's sleeve and whispered something in his ear, a secret plan it seemed, and he nodded with a grin. Thomas then turned to Jessica with a mixture of excitement and apology. "I hope you don't think this is forward, but we were about to grab some dinner and there's an extra seat at our table. Would you join us?" Jessica froze. Invitations like this had been rare, often hollow, filled with pity or hidden agendas. But in his eyes there was no pretense, only kindness. She hesitated for a heartbeat and then nodded, the smile breaking across her face like sunlight through clouds. They left the cafe together, the little girl holding her hand for a moment before Thomas carefully lifted her wheelchair into the car. Jessica marveled at how naturally it felt, how human to be treated with dignity, to be included in something that seemed bigger than herself yet entirely personal. As they drove, the city lights reflected in the car windows, painting streaks of gold and amber across Jessica's eyes. She shared laughter with Emily, talking about favorite cartoons, silly games, and the imaginary adventures that children could make real with just a word. Thomas listened, interjecting occasionally with wry humor, stories of boardroom blunders and playful admonishments that made both Jessica and Emily laugh until tears formed at the corners of their eyes. For Jessica, each moment was a revelation, a reminder that life could still hold beauty, that people could still surprise her with generosity that asked for nothing in return. The evening air carried scents of roasted coffee, fresh bread, and city rain, mingling in a way that felt almost cinematic, as if the world had orchestrated this moment just for her. She realized then that sometimes the universe delivers miracles not in grand gestures or fortune, but in quiet, unexpected encounters that remind you of your worth. They arrived at a small bistro that overlooked the river, its outdoor seating glowing softly under string lights. Thomas made sure Jessica was comfortable, and Emily immediately began pointing out the ducks gliding across the water below, her voice bubbling with excitement. Dinner was a simple affair, but filled with laughter, storytelling, and moments of silent connection that spoke louder than words ever could. At one point, Thomas excused himself to take a call, and Jessica found herself alone with Emily, who looked up at her with curious eyes. "You're nice," she said simply, the honesty of a child cutting through years of Jessica's self-doubt. Jessica's throat tightened, and she realized that in this brief evening, she had been seen, not as a project, not as someone broken, but as herself, full of life, humor, and dreams that were still worth pursuing. The gratitude that welled inside her was almost overwhelming, a warmth that made her feel like she had been carrying a candle through darkness and someone had finally noticed the light. After dinner, as they strolled along the riverside, Thomas pushed her wheelchair with a steady rhythm and Emily skipped ahead, turning back to share little discoveries along the way. The city hummed around them, indifferent to the small miracle that had unfolded on its streets, yet Jessica felt a sense of belonging she had not known in years. At one point, Thomas stopped, looking out over the water, and Jessica sensed the weight behind his silence. He turned to her and said softly, "You know, life has a way of showing us kindness when we least expect it. Not always in the ways we think we need, but exactly what we need." She nodded, understanding more in that moment than words could convey. "Thank you," she whispered, realizing that the gratitude was not just for the evening, but for a reminder that humanity, even in strangers, could be profoundly beautiful. As the night drew to a close, Thomas and Emily escorted her back to her apartment, and for a moment Jessica hesitated at the door. She wanted to ask if this was real, if perhaps she had dreamed it all, but Emily tugged her sleeve and said, "See you soon, right?" And just like that, the magic of the evening crystallized into something she could hold on to. Hope. Thomas smiled, a quiet, reassuring smile that made her feel safe in the unpredictability of life. "We'll see you soon," he echoed. And with that they left, stepping into the night while Jessica remained in her doorway, feeling a sense of peace and renewal she had not known since before the accident. In the days that followed, Jessica reflected on that night constantly, on the laughter shared, the stories told, the warmth of a stranger who had become a friend. She realized that kindness did not always arrive in grand gestures or life-altering fortunes. It often arrived quietly, persistently in the form of shared moments, genuine attention, and acts of inclusion that restored faith in humanity. She began to reach out, to reconnect with old friends, to explore new opportunities, carrying with her the memory of a little girl's honesty and a man's quiet generosity. Life, she understood, was not defined by what was taken from her, but by the love and kindness she could accept and share. And in that acceptance she found freedom, not just from the loneliness that had haunted her, but from the fear that she might never again experience trust, joy, or the simple magic of being seen. Months later, Jessica often thought of